Hi everybody, and welcome to my tour on the architecture of London's South Bank. I'm Chris, and I'm an architect, and I'm going to show you around the area. The South Bank that we see today really came about when an area of industrial backland was converted into the 1951 Festival of Britain. The festival was all about showcasing new technology and looking forward to the future. Also, after the challenge of the Second World War, at a time when the country was still on rations, Labour, which was the government in power at the time, hoped that the festival would be a tonic for the nation. And the architecture of the festival would represent a celebration of new technology also, in the style of international modernism. Taking its roots from continental Europe and Walter Gropius and the Bauhaus, this style of architecture reflected the spirit of the age, with slogans such as "Form follows function" and the architect Mies van der Rohe's "Less is more." And in the case of the building behind me, the Royal Festival Hall, we can really see these slogans put into practice. With its clean lines and unadorned forms, we can see the form of the building expressed on the outside, with the auditorium space breaking out through the top of the building through the glazed screen that wraps around it. For this reason, the Royal Festival Hall is sometimes described as being an egg in a box. We're now inside the Royal Festival Hall, looking at a fabulous model of the Festival of Britain. We can see that the festival comprised lots of different structures, such as the Dome of Discovery, which at the time of construction was the largest dome in the world, and the iconic Skylon, a kind of metallic, cigar-shaped object that hovered above the ground as a beacon to the festival. Sadly, all of the structures, apart from the Royal Festival Hall, were demolished when the Conservatives came back into power, as Winston Churchill saw the exhibition as a reflection of socialist propaganda. The Royal Festival Hall might not be to everyone's taste, but with its internal columns and its auditorium space hovering above our heads, creating one big great open plan floor space, it must have been pretty radical at the time. And this, combined with the fact that it's so welcoming to the general public, makes it one of my favourite buildings. As the country moved into the 1960s and 70s, international modernism developed into brutalism. And it was the Swiss-French architect Le Corbusier that coined the expression Breton brut, which literally means raw concrete. The buildings here behind me, the Queen Elizabeth Hall and the Hayward's Gallery, are uncompromising and to many unforgiving in their use of harsh lumps of raw concrete. I have to say, when I look at the Hayward Gallery, it gives me a weird sensation, like some kind of alien spaceship from a dystopian era. I'm not sure if I like it or I hate it. Taking a closer look at the hexagonal columns of the Queen Elizabeth Hall, we can see the hallmark of brutalist architecture. We can see in the column the indentation of the timber shuttering that was used to pour the concrete between. And we can also see the grain of the wood of the timber, left there deliberately to produce this harsh, rough surface. I actually think the columns are pretty cool, and they run down through the floor of the building to the undercroft below, and we're going to go and take a look at that now. This is where you'll find me on my days off, showcasing my skateboarding skills. Actually, joking aside, I love the way the skateboarding community and graffiti artists have adopted this space and made it their home, injecting life, movement and colour amongst the raw concrete structures. Probably the most controversial building here on the South Bank is the National Theatre. In fact, King Charles once described it as a clever way of building a nuclear power station in the centre of London. The building was designed by the Brutalist architect Dennis Lasdun, and with its urban landscape of interlocking concrete terraces, it certainly divides opinion. However, I think really to appreciate a building, you've got to engage with it, and that's what we're going to do. As we enter into the building, we can see how the dramatically coffered ceiling goes from the outside to the inside, cutting across the glazed screen below it. The inside spaces are all about drama, playing around with different floor-to-ceiling heights and contrasting levels of daylight. It's almost as if Lasdun treated the public space as a kind of theatre itself. Let's now take the stairs and go up the building. The truth is, when I first saw this building, I didn't like it. But the more I spend time in its dramatic foyers and terraces that provide fantastic views of London's skyline, including Wren's St Paul's Cathedral, the more I like it, and the more I share in the architect's original vision. That said, I think it's time we had a break from brutalism and saw some other styles of architecture. What could be more exciting than at low tide on the South Bank, with St Paul's Cathedral as a backdrop and coming in mudlarking? This is the process of searching amongst the stones and the rocks here for old finds that date back hundreds of years. Here we have bits of old clay pipe that people were smoking back in the 17 and 1800s. I've got a piece of clay roofing tile that could date back to the medieval period or even the Roman period. Here I've got a piece of oyster shell. People were eating a lot of oysters back then and sometimes using the shells as money. And then I've got bits of pottery that could date back to the Victorian period. And if you're really lucky, you might even be able to find a Roman coin. We're standing in front of Giles Gilbert Scott's Bankside Power Station, built in the mid-1900s out of over 4 million bricks with its massive chimney and vast turbine hall. It really is a cathedral of a building. The architectural style, perhaps subtly so, is Art Deco. Although it lacks the shiny metallic surfaces of other iconic Art Deco buildings, such as the Chrysler Building or the Empire State Building, its perforated brick facade and distinctive features and references to past styles place it within the Art Deco category. By the way, Giles Gilbert Scott not only also designed Battersea Power Station, Liverpool Cathedral, which is the largest cathedral in the country, and the red telephone box, but he also shares my last name. It's easy to forget, but at one time the building's enormous chimney would have been belching out fumes that would have mixed with fog to create smog that plagued the health of Londoners back then. Of course today, the building has been reincarnated as the Tate Modern. The competition-winning scheme of the Swiss architects Herzog and de Meuron converted the building into galleries and added an additional story in the form of a light box to contrast with the brick chimney. Herzog and de Meuron also designed the new wing to the museum. With its deliberately awkward form comprised of clashing and intersecting shapes, I would identify this structure as deconstructivism style of architecture. It certainly contrasts with the high-tech architecture of Richard Rogers' flashy apartment blocks standing opposite. Behind me, we have Norman Foster's ambitious Millennium Bridge, also known as the Wobbly Bridge, because on the opening day in June 2000, when people were crossing the bridge, it swayed so much that they thought it was about to collapse. From a technical point of view, what happened is that the rhythmic motion of the people walking in step was amplified by the natural frequency of the bridge. This confusing and alarming phenomenon known as resonance was eventually dealt with the help of a series of dampers. Anyway, with its minimalist steel structure and sleek high-tech aesthetic, I think the bridge is a fantastic addition to London's river. If you want to find something completely different on the South Bank, then here it is. The reconstruction of Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, which burnt down in the 17th century. The building is the inspiration of the American actor Sam Wanamaker, who with the architect Theo Crosby reconstructed the building in 1997. Actually, it's not on the exact same spot as the original theatre, which is a little bit further inland, as the Thames used to be wider back then. Remains of the original theatre weren't discovered until the recreation was already under construction. Still, finding the remains helped the architect to understand how the original Elizabethan building was constructed, and he's attempted to incorporate many original features in his design, such as its polygon shape and oak timber framing infilled with Lasdun plaster. It's also, since the Great Fire of London, the only building that's been allowed to have a thatched roof. We've come a little bit further along the Thames to the Anchor pub, which dates back hundreds of years. During Shakespeare's time, this riverside tavern was at the centre of theatre land, where bear baiting, entertainment and prostitution took place. It also seems a good place to end the tour. But before we go inside and drink a few pints, just to say, if you have enjoyed the tour, please do leave a like, or better still, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next tour.